Welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. It's great to see you guys. My name is Terry, and today I'll be talking about 10 things that Wild Rift does worse than other MOBAs. This topic might be a little controversial, but I do want to say beforehand that I absolutely love Wild Rift, and not gonna lie, this is all for content. I'm gonna be trying to put some positive spins on each of these topics, that way I don't sound overly negative throughout the entire video.
The first topic up is originality. This one is a bit of a funny topic because League of Legends is very original. The champion designs and backstories have a robust history around them. Many of the champions have become iconic in their own regards, carrying with them a reputation all around the world. The world surrounding League of Legends, in essence Runeterra, has become so robust in history and culture. And although League of Legends is very original, Wild Rift is not, since it's technically based off of a pre-existing game. Even when comparing the game to the infamous Mobile Legends, Wild Rift definitely rips off of League of Legends even more. Of course, Wild Rift is League of Legends Mobile, therefore it's socially acceptable because it's under its name, while Mobile Legends unethically mirrored League PC without proper consent. Wild Rift is beginning to have a bit more identity through its unique skins, but the game still has a long way to go before it can be deemed distinguishable enough from League PC, at least in the skins department. Don't get me wrong, the skins that Wild Rift ported from its PC counterpart are very much well translated. They look fantastic, but it would definitely be nice if Wild Rift were to receive more exclusive skins that did not exist in League of Legends. Before we move on, let's jump into our question of the day. The community is pretty negative as of late. Do you guys think that their concerns and complaints are well warranted? Why or why not?
So I do think that the community has this negativity and they complain for a reason. There's pretty bad matchmaking that Riot seems to be standing firmly behind, and there are a lot of issues around the game that just simply haven't been resolved yet. But I do think that the community should try to be a little bit more positive, because Wild Rift is someplace that I personally go to as a comfort zone, and if that comfort zone gets more and more toxic, then it just feels worse to be around and involved in that community. I know being negative in mobile communities has become such a societal norm, but I do hope that we can try practicing a little bit more understanding, more patience. I know that there are so many viable concerns around these complaints, but let's try to be understanding and just try to tolerate it rather than complain as much as we do about it, which has turned the community very, very toxic. I mean, to begin with, it was pretty toxic. But anyway, don't forget to join our ProGuides Discord, link in the description below.
The second aspect Wild Rift does worse compared to other MOBAs is having too steep of a learning curve. So many MOBAs are vastly more simple to play than Wild Rift, especially on the mobile. This therefore allows more players to access the game, therefore creating a bigger community. Pokemon Unite, quite frankly, is overwhelming Wild Rift in regards to the number of players. Although this doesn't bode well in regards to appealing to a bigger population of players, Wild Rift's complexity instead lends itself to more in-depth gameplay and content. There's only so much informative content that can be created from Pokemon Unite. Wild Rift, on the other hand, has deeper know-hows and game mechanics that truly distinguish the experts from the casuals. The depth of the game is what makes it such an amazing experience, but it's also what steers so many players away from it. The plus side is that Wild Rift has a very viable esports scene, unlike a more casual game like Pokemon Unite. Since there are so many different things to keep track of in Wild Rift, skill expression is more visible. This makes competing actually reflect skill and allows watching the esport to have more meaning to it. Therefore, the trade-off is that the game is less appealing to the casual player base, but instead roots itself in a strong foundation centered around competitive gaming. This point is pretty related to the previous section. Wild Rift's original marketing made it seem pretty beginner friendly, targeted at simplified League of Legends experience on the go. But after its initial marketing, the game's advertising went pretty quiet. A lot of us know that it's definitely not a simple game, albeit it's definitely more simple than League PC. I mean, take the Pentaboom ad for example. I've literally never seen anyone look over my shoulder when I play Wild Rift and actually see what's going on. The phone is pretty small, and even I can barely see what's going on unless I'm like super hyper-focused on the game. And imagine actually having friends to play Wild Rift with. I make a living off of it and I legit don't have any friends to play with myself. And have you guys seen that one advertisement with Faker? It's hilarious. But after the initial small wave of ads, Wild Rift doesn't do nearly enough to market itself anymore. The growth of the game is primarily organic, utilizing the game's updates to push forward. And that's really good, since it shows that the developers are committed to improving the game. But even then, I still think the game can use some more marketing exposure. Well-made ads that show off the game as the gem that it is would definitely help bring in new players. If the advertisements help communicate Wild Rift's unique strengths and differentiate it from other games in the market, the player base could very well see some more growth. After all, if Mobile Legends Bang Bang can pop off from good marketing, I'm sure Wild Rift can do it as well. This then begs the question, how come Riot isn't doing this? My speculation would have to be that they're just trying to grow Wild Rift into a more presentable state. Maybe they have certain benchmarks that they want to reach. I'm assuming the Horizon Cup is definitely one of them. I'm honestly quite unsure to whatever else they're building up for. Clearly, console release isn't coming for a long time, so I don't want to say anything regarding that. For all intents and purposes, Wild Rift has a bare minimum of game modes for a MOBA. A ranked mode, a standard mode, and even more casual all random all mid. But considering the amount of different game modes that have made it onto League PC and other MOBAs, we all know that there are far more variety of gameplay options that the game can open up. Even if it's not balanced whatsoever, I personally love to see Earth on Wild Rift. For those of you unfamiliar with this game mode, this is essentially the most fiesta a game mode gets. Existing on League PC, Earth provides limitless mana alongside the highest possible cooldown reduction, allowing for players to spam their abilities as much as possible. Having a 3v3 or a 4v4 game mode would be absolutely wonderful as well. Just anything to switch up from the usual dynamic of Wild Rift. Maybe even a co-op vs AI, kind of like the Star Guardians event from years ago on League PC. I'm not talking about bots, I'm talking about literal waves of enemy that you have to fight off as a team. I think that'd be super fun. Wild Rift has like one cool event every couple months. These have amazing cinematics and lore context surrounding them. But outside of these events, many of the in-game events are pretty lackluster. Besides the Wild Pass, which players have to pay to acquire the juiciest loot, Wild Rift events are a little lacking. They give a lot of blue essence, present missions that help you buy more champions, but the events typically lack a certain festive flair to them. I don't know, maybe I'm expecting a little too much out of the game, and maybe my opinion on this is an outlier. I remember a couple of weeks ago they had that Guess a Champion event, and people on the Wild Rift subreddit were talking about how, oh, that's definitely quirky, there's no way it's not quirky, and then Riot revealed it was Garen in a pose that he's never been in. I don't know, I just thought it was really ridiculous and pointless, and it kind of reminded me of the Pokemon meme where it's guess that Pokemon, and it ended up being Jigglypuff from above. Anyway, there was also like the pool party event, which was really mediocre. Pretty much, they just set a wallpaper and gave out some random missions attached to them. On the competitive side, I think Wild Rift is doing fantastically. The game's balance, although pretty controversial at times, is still going pretty well overall. In my opinion, they have to add more fun game modes and events that correspond with real-life holidays. That would improve the experience as an online game, and they did include some Halloween-themed skins, but those came out literally the week of Halloween. I'm talking about Bewitching Jana. The game as a whole is improving, but there's little to nothing in the actual gameplay that helps players feel connected to the real-life holidays that occur. And I think for an online game, it's really important to help the community feel connected during these holidays, to help them feel like even though they're playing these video games online during Christmas, during the New Year's, that they still feel like they're celebrating. It becomes really depressing to be playing on Halloween, and the only thing that reminds you that you're playing on Halloween is Bewitching Jana, which you have to pay for. Okay, to be honest, my connectivity is perfectly fine. I live in plain South Korean server, which is home to the fastest internet in the world. Just a small humble brag right there. But apparently, lots of other regions have been experiencing some complete booty connectivity issues and lag spikes. As a competitive MOBA, this is just really tilting for players to experience and handle. So many of the community members are constantly complaining about this issue, so I'm not gonna give it any more attention than I already have. If you want to know more and like hear more about these complaints, I'm sure you can just head down to the comments. There's bound to be like at least a couple dozen people complaining about it. Wild Rift on my device's full capabilities is the most battery hungry app I've ever used. I don't use the application outside of the recommended graphic or frame rate values either, but I'm fairly certain my phone's battery life was decimated from playing the game far too much. I'm not trying to complain. It was my decision to play the game as long as I did without turning down the graphics. If it meant sacrificing my phone's longevity for some detailed, beautiful 3D models so I can absolutely just smurf on my opponents, I'm gonna make that decision 9 times out of 10. Actually, probably 10 times out of 10. I've never had my phone feel as hot as it does when I play Wild Rift. The game is so immensely powerful, which is a huge kudos to the developers for making the MOBA so detailed. Wild Rift's graphics and visuals, in my opinion, look much better than League of Legends, at least on the maximum settings. It's so impressive that the phone is capable of such power, and even more impressive that the developers put in the time to push the limits of the platform so far. It sucks that some phones simply cannot handle the amount of power that the game puts out, but the developers added a lot of customizations to help prevent this issue. Of course, if you're playing on a potato, even the lowest settings on Wild Rift will absolutely fry your phone. Wild Rift's matchmaking is an issue. Practically everyone in the community knows this, and to be honest, it's getting kind of old hearing the same complaints over and over and over again. This doesn't mean the complaints aren't well warranted, I just don't want to add more fuel to the fire that's already burning through the community. And I could have easily not mentioned it, but hey, I needed 10 stuff for this list and it felt just wrong not to add matchmaking onto a video that highlights Wild Rift's issues. Wild Rift content viewership isn't that great. You're a viewer yourself and I'm a content creator creating Wild Rift videos, so it's a little awkward for me to be bringing this up, but hey, I want to talk about it anyway. Wild Rift, in regards to quality and competitive gameplay, is definitely really high up there, but there simply aren't enough people that care about the game. Without the proper funding for content creators and streamers, and the general lack of interest in Wild Rift content, creators struggle to invest their time and energy to create engaging titles and personalities that naturally bring in more viewership. As of now, most people just market their streaming off of skill, saying that they're Challenger EU or Top 100 Senna main. But at the end of the day, players need to care about who those streamers are and what they bring to the table. And typically, players cling on to personality and skill. They're equally important. They want to know the person they're watching, connect with them, bond with them. In regards to streaming, when the game involves crouching down and staring intensely at the phone, the connection with the audience is often lost. Rather than watching the streamer's face as they react to plays, viewers observe the top side of the streamer's head. Even for the most optimal shot, streamers need to look down. Therefore, portraying and creating a personality that viewers can connect with becomes really difficult. This is something that almost explains itself and has been kind of discussed to death on this YouTube channel. Wild Rift is still in its open beta phase for well over a year. Other MOBAs go into beta for maybe a couple months, often a closed beta, then release full on. Pokemon Unite released globally, then follow up their console release with a mobile release like 3 months later. Meanwhile, Wild Rift has had an entire year of open beta, with literally no news on the console version. This leaves room for the developers to have a fallback excuse for their slow attention to detail for specific portions of the game. Some may argue that Wild Rift should have officially released by now instead of extending the open beta as long as they have. But then you can also argue that it's our decision to play a game that is clearly flawed during its beta stage of development. It's a very interesting dilemma.
And that concludes today's video. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for everything Wild Rift. And I want to conclude this by saying, don't forget to address the question of the day in the comments below, and don't forget about what I was saying throughout it. The community is pretty negative, and I don't want to criticize the community too much because I'm also very negative. I get toxic at times. I get really toxic at times if I'm being completely honest, but let's try to practice a bit more understanding and patience so we can make the community a better place for all of us. Until next time, good luck in your games and stay safe.